Are you ready to thrive? As a trauma therapist, author, yoga instructor, and healed human, I personally and professionally know what it means to live stuck in survival mode. I've learned a few things in my healing journey and my career that can help you transform into your best self. Join me, Rebecca Case, as I use neuroscience, psychology, spirituality, and personal experience to help you find the tools and techniques to thrive. Welcome back to Thrive the podcast. I am super excited to share some space with my very good friend, Leah, who is an amazing human being and also works for a very cool company with a very cool product that has some very cool outcomes on your nervous system. And that is Unite and their Safe and Sound protocol. And I'm sure if you're listening, you're like, what is this? I've never heard of this. And we are going to dive all into that today. So welcome, Leah.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Would you like to share a little bit about who you are and where you are in the world and anything you want to share with our listeners here?
Yes, I'd be pleased to. So my name is Leah Dawang. I am speaking from the unceded territories of the Arapaho and the Ute tribe, also known as Denver, Colorado. And I bring a couple of context to this conversation. So the first one would be that I work for Unite. I am our partnership cultivation person. So it's my job to be really curious about who in this landscape, in the therapeutic landscape, are going in the same direction as Unite, and how might we come together and be more powerful together. So that is one context. A second context is I use the SSP in a practice. In my practice called Clear the Way, I am studying somatic experiencing, just about to finish and earn my certificate. Long time coming. And I have a deep love for neurobiology, and also am training to work with couples using relational life therapy. So Terry Real's work. So that's all that not all, but those are highlights of what I bring to this space today.
Lots of things that you bring to this space. So I had the wonderful opportunity to get connected to Leah. I don't know, we've been chatting for about a year now, maybe, and have learned a lot from you and just learning about Unite and SSP, about just another modality, another intervention that can be used to help calm, regulate, build more safety and resiliency in the nervous system. So we're talking about the autonomic nervous system and some polyvagal theory stuff, y'all, which we've talked about on some previous podcasts, the power of the mighty and magical vagus nerve. And so could you share with us just a little bit about what the Safe and Sound protocol is?
Yes, I can. And you tell me if I go too long, because I could talk about it forever. The Safe and Sound protocol is developed by Dr. Stephen Porges, so author of the polyvagal theory. He designed this protocol and was the first researcher on it. We have a number of research studies, both currently underway and also complete, all with incredible outcomes. The Safe and Sound protocol, familiarly called the SSP, is music. It is music that you would likely recognize in some capacity. Some of the playlists have Disney music on them. Others have soft rock and jazz. And then others are non-lyrical that you may not recognize. But what is special about this music is that it's been put through an algorithm designed by Dr. Porges. And that algorithm is quite unique in that it systematically teases out high and low frequencies. And we can think about these high and low frequencies as potential cues of threat to the nervous system. So it's taking those away. And what it leaves is this middle band of frequencies, anywhere between 500 to 5,000 hertz. And that middle band is quite special because it's the envelope of the human voice. Dr. Porges calls the SSP the mother's coo, or likens it to the mother's lullaby. And so if you think about, and this is what I share with my clients, you think about a baby crying, and mom picking up baby and saying, "Oh, it's okay. I'm right here. We're okay." That melodic frequency of tones. What does baby do? Settles. Right. And even as I'm thinking about that, I can feel my system going, "Oh yeah, right." Yeah. And so it's 5 hours of that music, and it's dynamically filtered, meaning that it changes over those 5 hours and really brings your nervous system through a journey and ultimately retunes or realigns your nervous system with the safety that's available. And if someone has had their nervous system patterned by experiences of threat, and then their defenses are up, they may be stuck in sympathetic or in dorsal, the SSP can be really supportive in bringing them back to that ventral connected place. And then if I can add one more thing, it would be a misnomer about the SSP is that you put the headphones on and you listen, and all of a sudden you feel regulated. And it's much more of a journey than that. Sometimes safety cues are interpreted by the nervous system as being like, "Whoa, hold on here." Wait a minute, depending on someone's history. So it brings you through a journey that ideally ends with your system feeling more in ventral and more connected.
I love that you point that out. So often we're looking for like, where's the hack? Where's the quick fix? I feel dysregulated right now. Leah and I were actually just chatting before we jumped on of we both have some stuff going on in our life right now that we're both reflecting like, oh, I'm noticing that in my system. And oh, yeah, we always want a quick fix, right? Because when you feel dysregulated, you just yearn for some regulation. But really, there is no thing that is going to just be a quick fix, whether that's EMDR or a breathing exercise or SSP, like your nervous system needs some time to settle. I had the fortunate opportunity of receiving SSP from Leah a couple of weeks ago. So we did a session together and I got to be on the receiving end. And my experience, it was very timely because we met, I think you were like my first meeting of the day. So it was like how I started off my day, which was nice. I didn't have to like shift in my brain and task shift that is. And I was feeling activated about some stuff that had been happening in my life. And so it was just very timely of like, oh yes, like we're not just doing this to kind of practice with each other for me to experience. Like I would love to actually receive this. And I think you provided the protocol to me for over about an hour. And I listened to some chill kind of lo-fi beats, which was what I was in the mood for that day. And I was able to get out all these little comfort items around me. I had a blanket and I had some of my stones and my Buddha figure and I had a journal. And it was a journey. It was these moments of kind of some rise and some discomfort, I would say, or some feels. And then like this shift of, oh, but I recognize this, or I see this, or I can hold the duality of it all. So can you maybe explain a little of like what the journey is like with SSP, maybe from the client's perspective, because I know you've received SSP, and then maybe we can talk about also as the practitioner, what that's like.
Yeah, absolutely. From the client's perspective, and I'll just share my own because I'm my perspective is the one I have. And as I've gone through the SSP, I've gone through it about 6 times now, delivered or guided by different people. So I've had it from my own therapist. I've had it from other SSP providers. And your nervous system is, and I'm going to take it from an somatic experiencing lens, your nervous system is intended to be flexible. It's intended to go up into activation and respond to cues of potential threat. And then it's also intended to come back down and to come back into homeostatic function, to allow yourself to feel connected with yourself, others, the living world around you. And as a client, one of, I think, the norms of an SSP journey is to feel that, is to potentially go up, feel some activation, which we don't have to be scared of. We don't have to brace against or be fearful of. And I would get into the role of the practitioner in that moment as well. But we can feel that activation, be curious about it, and then observe, be with our nervous system as it comes back down. And we can feel the settling and the releasing of that experience. And if it's okay, I'll actually interweave the practitioner's role here too, because if folks have had a trauma history, depending on how their nervous system has adapted and survived, it's exquisitely intelligent. They may feel like they go up and then go, oh no, I'm not coming back down. I'm staying up, whether that's in that sympathetic charge or potentially dorsal, and they've had a bit of a collapse. As a practitioner, one of my very favorite phrases from my SE training was, you are the guardian of overwhelm. You stand guard at the gates of overwhelm and make sure that your client's nervous system does not tread into that place of overwhelm. And so I would say the same thing here within the practitioner's role of SSP, is that they are to create a space to hold that container. And then if their client's nervous system goes up and then is having a hard time coming back down, we pause the music. And that's the client's nervous system sending a cue, communicating, saying, oh, too much, or, oh, that's enough. And we pause the music, and we may use other ways of supporting that system to discharge the activation that's there and to come back down into that regulated space.
Thank you for that description. And I mean, I'll say that was very much my experience. Sounds like you said, like I'm talking from my experience as somebody who's received it as well. And one thing that I loved about my experience with SSP is, one, how blendable it is with other approaches. So you were using somatic experiencing as you were guiding me. You also used quite a bit of internal family systems. And I can still think of those two parts that I ended up with at the end. I discovered like this new part, like this cool hip bell-bottom wearing 70s gal that came off of an elevator. I don't know where she came from, but she's really hip. So I love that you can blend it. So you could blend it with EMDR therapy. You could blend it with ACT. You could blend it with CPT, or it could be a standalone protocol. Am I right in that?
That's a good question, and I'm glad you bring it up. The SSP is actually, I would call it quite agnostic. So similar to what you're saying, it's happy to hold hands with any other way of knowing. Play therapy, sensory integration, somatic experiencing, IFS, CBT, DBT, ACT, expressive art therapy. I could come up with more acronyms, I'm sure. And it is best delivered when it is integrated into another way of knowing. And part of that is because the nervous system is so complex. And because we're working with the physiology, this is a bottom up, a body-based therapy, but your thinking brain and all the other ways that your being exists within space and time, it's not big enough to hold it all. And I actually would say not one modality is big enough to hold it all. I think, I think in systems frameworks and integrative in general, but I would say specifically for the SSP, pairing it with a therapist's or a practitioner's other ways of knowing is like brilliant.
Yeah. I completely concur that our approaches for healing tend to work best when we integrate them. And yeah, even though the APA wouldn't like me saying that, but it's the truth. So I'll share at the end of my SSP experience, our session that day. So again, we met for an hour, so we didn't do like the full 5-hour protocol, but I stepped away after our session, had like about an hour to just kind of be with myself, with my experience, with my process, with my thoughts. And I felt the effects of it for quite a few days, I would say, of just kind of this sparked curiosity and a bit more quiet inside, feeling a bit more grounded. And granted, the thing that was kind of getting at me that morning, like it was still there, but I felt more solid in where my system was as I was interfacing with this kind of stressor or activator, the shit that happens in life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and something I share with my clients is that this work, right, the work, or going through the SSP, it will not stop hard things from happening. Hard things are still going to happen. What we are interested in, I think, is focusing on shifting our relationship to the hard thing. And when I consider what a system in ventral, or has a home of ventral, that it may go into sympathetic or go into dorsal when necessary, it comes back home to ventral, to use one of Deb Dana's analogies. It looks at those hard things and says, yeah, but it's nuanced. Or, yeah, I can hold that. I can also, I remember, Rebecca, if I can share, you saying, I can be brave and scared at the same time. And so to the ventral nature of being able to kind of play in the gray and hold two knowings at once and be curious and open about those, I think is one of the benefits of experiencing something like the SSP. It allows life to be as complex as it really is, rather than trying to, or having the impulse to be rigid, or this is the one way it will always be.
Yeah. And I mean, just as we think about resiliency on this podcast and what it means to thrive, like to have resiliency and to thrive is not defined by the absence of adversity. It's very much defined as the outcome of the work you've done that helps you navigate adversity, because this is life. You were born with a nervous system that responds to stress. If you didn't have a nervous system that responded to stress, you probably wouldn't need to listen to this podcast in the first place, or get SSP or EMDR or do any of the work, right? But we have these tender nervous systems that are focused on survival and danger and protecting us. And so life is full of big and small, hard things. And so finding the pathways to be able to come home to yourself, like you're saying, when you can go through adversity, but know I still have a home inside of me. And even if I'm not home right now, because things really are really hard, like I know that I'll get back home eventually. That ability to kind of like trust the process, right? Trust the process of feeling and healing.
Yeah. Can I add something that's coming up for me just around the process of SSP? We've talked a lot about the music. I would venture to say that 50% of that process is the music itself. It is quite potent music because of that algorithm that we talked about, and it's been filtered through. The other 50% is the relationship.
Amen.
And the context of the relationship, the substance of the relationship between the practitioner and the client. And I love that you said you concurred, because I think we can be really curious about, even if the relationship itself doesn't feel like resonant for a moment or in sync for a moment, there's so much opportunity even in that moment to be really curious about, well, what is my nervous system actually saying or communicating to me in relationship with this other person? And it becomes all of these micro moments and a healing potential if we can stay curious and open, and that the practitioner is, holding a robust container for all of that to exist. And that doesn't have to look one way or another.
Yeah. I so appreciate and honor that you just named the power of the relationship, because all research shows that all good healing happens in the presence of someone that you feel safe with and that you can be vulnerable with, right? And so knowing that the intervention, the actual like medicine that's being applied, whether that's SSP or EMDR or a massage or what have you, right? Like whatever healing modality you are leaning towards, the intervention is only a part of it. But if you don't feel safe with that individual, then will your nervous system be able to be safe enough to receive versus being protected and defended and disconnected. And so while Leah is not my practitioner, she's not my therapist, we are friends, I felt so much safety from you to do that, where if I didn't know you or if you had sent me some cues of danger at various points in our conversations, I wouldn't have been quite so vulnerable with you and I wouldn't have had that outcome.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about the research on SSP? Because it sounds a little woo-woo, right? Like it is researched. Yes. So tell us about some of that goodness.
Well, I'll start historically. Dr. Porges, with his original creation of the SSP, did 2 clinical trials that were both incredibly robust, particularly done with kiddos who were on the autism spectrum. So that's where the research started. And out of its outcomes, the SSP was birthed into the world and started to be used by a number of different practitioners. I would say now the spectrum of people, of providers that use the SSP is quite broad. Everyone from, we have physicians, nurses, medical staff, physical therapists, OTs, occupational therapists, and then a whole slew of mental health folks who are coming with different alternative modalities like we've talked about before. And I would also add body workers are in there. Thinking of like acupuncturists, functional medicine folks. So just to give you a breadth, right? And knowing that the research is going to be slightly different depending on which lens you're looking at the nervous system or at the SSP through. I'll share that within Unite, we take research very seriously. We have a research team that is constantly busy. They do a lot of work. And we have a number of not only clinical trials that are underway and soon to be published, which is very exciting, but we also value real world evidence. So if you're an SSP provider, as part of your portal, as part of, it's called your My Unite dashboard, you have access to a whole bunch of assessments. And those assessments can be sent automatically to your clients. And then the post assessments are also incorporated into that. And then we're collecting the real world evidence to say, gosh, this is what's happening all across our 3,000 plus providers all across the world. And so taking an integrative approach to that, building that evidence base, which is well on its way. And I would say if folks want to get to know that more, on our website, which is integratedlisteningsystems.com, and there's a whole research area where you can read case studies, you can get to know the different trials that have been completed and those that are underway. And then maybe I'll add to this that coming soon, not yet out, but coming soon, we have a white paper that is developing the understanding of what does music do at the highest level within the nervous system and what evidence supports the idea of music within a therapeutic context, and then breaks that down to listening-based therapies, and then narrows that down even further to say, okay, well then what makes some of Unite's products, some of Unite's programs unique to even just listening therapies, and really builds kind of the solid, broad spectrum understanding of how does music function all the way to, and what makes the SSP, the Safe and Sound Protocol, as special as it is.
Okay. Thank you for that overview. So if someone's listening and they are looking to receive SSP, where would they go? What do they do?
Great question. I would send you to the same website, which I imagine we would link in the show notes. Same website. And there is a tab on there that will allow you to find a practitioner. And we actually do an intentional job of matching potential clients with practitioners, one of the things that we are hopeful for is that, again, this process of finding someone, the process of SSP is not overwhelming. And so someone would put in various information, and then we have a matching process that would say, hey, we think that this provider would be a really good match for you. And so that is if someone was looking to receive SSP as a client, where I would send them. And then if they are a practitioner and they're interested in experiencing it, integrating those learnings into their own practice, we have a mentorship program where our mentors deliver SSP to providers. And there's different coaching and things that get incorporated into that experience as well. So that would be the other place. If you're a provider, it would send you to our mentorship program.
That's great. And one thing I'm thinking about is just the challenges of state lines sometimes so if you're a therapist, depending on what your license is and what state you're in, you can't provide psychotherapy to somebody in another state. And so I'm guessing that depending on if you're a provider or you're a potential client and you're seeking someone, it would depend on that provider's credentials, because that doesn't apply to all providers. Can you speak to that a little bit so folks can think about that as they search?
Yeah. It's a bit outside my wheelhouse just because I'm not a therapist. So I'm not entirely oriented around it, but I do know what you're referring to. I'm imagining, I know within that matching process, that is a part of what we're asking for, the information that we'd be asking for. So ensuring that it's in alignment with that. And then, I know that some of our providers also operate under coaching kind of statutes, or being coaches alongside their credentials. And SSP has, because of its broad nature and its kind of takes on whatever angle that someone might be delivering it from. Some providers are delivering it within that kind of coaching mentality. And so that may open up some of those lines as well. But again, a little outside my wheelhouse as far as being able to speak to that specifically.
I think that was a solid answer. Some of those professions have some real strict boundaries and some of them have less strict boundaries. Yes. So it's great to know that your team is looking for that if folks are looking for a referral. So what might be some reasons that someone would seek out SSP, some of the benefits of SSP, so we can maybe speak to some folks and their pain points of if they're wondering, is this right for me? Should I pursue this? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, I can share some of the evidence-based claims that we can make. And speaking to symptomatology, things like sound sensitivity, right? Hyper sound sensitivity. That might be one way that your nervous system is communicating its overwhelm or its activation. That SSP has evidence to say that it can be supported with that. Emotional regulation. Just a big, broad bucket, right? But that's another area if you're saying, man, my emotions feel big. Or on the other side, I don't have many emotions. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I would say either of those can fit within that emotional regulation symptomatology, and evidence that we have that says SSP can be really supportive to that. This is a nuanced one, but I think it may resonate with folks. And it's kind of the, if you know, eye contact. So if someone is struggling, right, averting their eye contact, having a hard time looking at someone in the eyes, your eyes are a really important part of your social engagement system, which is what the nervous system and what the SSP is specifically engaging, that ventral vagal component of your nervous system. And so we've seen that eye contact becomes more natural, feels like a way to connect versus maybe eliciting uncomfortable feelings or squirmy feelings. And I can speak my own experience. SSP changed my life, starting at the baseline. And I used to have a really hard time making eye contact with someone without a part of me coming online and saying, I wonder what they're thinking. I wonder how my face looks. I wonder, is what I'm saying making sense? And sort of losing myself in that dialogue. I now find that eye contact comes really naturally. And it's one way that I feel comfortable in my own system now, showing someone, I'm with you. I'm here, I'm present, I'm connected. So those would be 3 examples of something that the SSP can be supportive of. And if folks are interested or are like, well, I wonder if it would help with X, a couple of different resources that I would point you to. One, our case study library. If you were to put in that X, whatever you are looking for support with, or a client needs support with something, you may throw that word into our search terms and see if any case studies pop up with results. That would be one way of doing a bit more digging. And the second way would be, especially if you're a practitioner, we have a team called our program consulting team, and their whole job is to be curious alongside you of how SSP could be integrated into your practice. And so they will take phone calls with you. You can ask them questions about, what about X symptomatology, or I'm looking to help a client with X. Can SSP be supportive? They can be really helpful and knowledgeable. A lot of them are actually SSP providers themselves. So those would be the 2 resources that I would send folks to.
That's awesome. So I'm just thinking about practitioners, if you're interested in getting trained in this protocol, if you're working with folks on the spectrum, if you're working with folks who have a lot of sensitivities, sensory sensitivities, if you're working with trauma, if you're working with anxiety, if you're working with depression, and also if you're working with folks who have a lot of chronic health issues, right? Because when we're constantly out of that ventral pathway, chronically hijacked by sympathetic overwhelm or dorsal shutdown, it just wreaks havoc on our bodies. So that can lead to a lot of immune issues, that can lead to heart and respiratory problems, a lot of GI issues. So, wherever you find yourself as a practitioner, if you are interfacing with folks who are dealing with very stressed out and dysregulated nervous systems, sounds like SSP could probably be potentially a great addition to your practice.
Yeah. And then if we want to zoom out even one more layer, I would say anyone with a nervous system could benefit. And we all live in this world that is demanding on our systems. Our evolutionary makeup is working as hard as it possibly can to catch up with the constant change and bombardment that we experience. And this is a funny little side comment to that. I would include animals in that. We don't have research to be able to say, hey, this is what's happening in, say, a canine's nervous system or a horse. But we do have a lot of practitioners that are doing some really cool work with either dogs who have experienced trauma. I've heard a case report of someone doing it with a pair of bunnies that were, I know. And I did it with my own dog, who was a street dog before we adopted her. And the changes that I witnessed physiologically in her, she had a rash that was very pronounced. It was hives, actually, stress induced. After doing the SSP, it cleared up. And so again, they're anecdotal, but I think people take a lot of hope in stories, a lot of hope in the anecdotes to say, this is my lived experience, alongside the research and the evidence.
Yeah, thank you. So for practitioners who are interested in getting trained, could you maybe share a couple of tidbits of like what that training looks like, and so they know what to expect?
Yes, absolutely. Our intention is to make it as accessible as possible. And so the training itself is about 8 hours of content in its current form. It is completed online and on demand. You can approach it as quickly and go through it as quickly as you'd like. You can take your time. And it is really, it's quite, what's the word, holistic in its existence. So it starts with laying the foundation of polyvagal theory. Dr. Porges, Deb Dana, and others that you would likely recognize are part of that. They're both advisors to Unite as well. So we have a relationship with them. And then it goes into how do you actually deliver it? And then some of the more practical elements. So someone would engage with that training and finish it. And then once they did, they could access the music via one of our subscription plans. And that would give you access to a number of different playlists and pathways. And maybe if I just run through the 3 pathways quickly, what you experienced, Rebecca, was SSP Core. So it's kind of the an analogy, a meat and potatoes of the SSP. It has the highest filtration. It's going to be theoretically the most therapeutically potent, although depending on someone's nervous system, any one of the other pathways could be equally as therapeutically potent. But it is the 5 hours and really set out as the journey that you would be bringing someone on. The other two pathways, the first one is called SSP Connect, and it mirrors the same playlists, so same song, same order, but no filtration. And like we said earlier, just music alone can have a profound impact on the nervous system. And one of the ways that we would recommend using SSP Connect is if someone is more sensitive in their system, and even if they're not, it's a helpful way to orient someone to, well, what does listening feel like just in general? What is this process like just in general before we start adding in some of the filtration? And then on the other end, SSP Balance. It's not dynamically filtered, meaning that the filtration does not change over the 5 hours, and it's filtered significantly less than SSP Core. And that might be used as either a refresher or kind of a tune-up. As someone has gone through and completed SSP Core, it can also be another step toward going through SSP. So you would have access to all of that. The online platform that I talked about earlier with assessments and resources, and you'd have a whole treasure trove to get lost in.
Yes, I have taken the training. It is a fantastic training, y'all. I mean, if you haven't gotten to do training with Porges or Deb Dana, I mean, it's worth it even just for that, let alone all the other goodies that you get beyond that. So I just can't recommend this protocol enough, whether you're a practitioner, a receiver, be both.
Yeah, be both.
Do it all. Yes, be both. And thank you so much for all of this fantastic information. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners or audience that I haven't asked you?
The last thing that I'd like to say is we are designed to connect. We're designed to be in relationship with ourselves, with others, and with the world around us. And the SSP is one way to reclaim that inherent design that we all have. One way to become more connected to yourself, others, and the world. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, my friend, for joining today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. We will link all of the things in the show notes. So if you are interested in looking for a practitioner, if you are interested in getting trained, if you want to check out that research, the case studies, you will have links in the notes to get there. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of Thrive the Podcast. I hope these insights inspire positive changes in your life. If you're ready to take the next step in your Thrive journey, check out goodies linked in the show notes and on my website, RebeccaCase.com. Sign up for my newsletter and get access to helpful resources, connect with my community, and be the first to know about events and happenings. Remember, your journey from surviving to thriving is unique, and you have the power to create your best life. Subscribe, share, and thrive into your potential. Until next time, this is Rebecca Case, signing off. Thrive on.